Under the sun-soaked skies of Beverly Hills, a place where glamour often walks hand in hand with scandal, an unexpected clash unfolded that left onlookers breathless, paparazzi scrambling, and the world buzzing. It wasn't just another celebrity sighting, nor was it a routine tabloid story about Hollywood drama. This was a confrontation between two women whose names dominate headlines for very different reasons. On one side stood Rihanna, a global icon whose every step resonates with authenticity, whose pregnancy has only magnified her aura of strength and confidence. On the other stood Meghan Markle, the Duchess-turned-Hollywood figure, whose every appearance seems to carry with it a storm of controversy, whispers of secrets, and an insatiable hunger for validation. This was no chance encounter, and what began as a seemingly ordinary afternoon walk turned into a moment that symbolized a battle between authenticity and illusion, between raw honesty and carefully orchestrated image. The scene outside the luxury boutiques of Beverly Hills was already alive with energy. Crowds had gathered, as they often do when whispers of celebrity appearances begin to circulate. Photographers lined the sidewalks, their lenses hungry for the perfect shot. Fans clutched their phones, eager to capture fleeting moments to share online. Suddenly, the buzz shifted into an unmistakable roar. Rihanna had arrived, dressed effortlessly in an ensemble that fused high fashion with her signature boldness. She carried herself with a glow that went beyond the obvious fact of her pregnancy. She radiated power, calm, and something the public has always cherished in her: authenticity. Every camera turned toward her, every voice shouted her name, and for a brief moment, the street belonged to her. Before we continue, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell for updates. But lurking within this moment was another presence. Meghan Markle had chosen the same setting, and whether by coincidence or by calculation, her timing could not have been more conspicuous. Meghan, known for her acute awareness of optics, knew well what the presence of Rihanna meant. A photograph with one of the most beloved and credible stars on the planet could do wonders for her faltering public image. She had been criticized endlessly for her inconsistencies, her strained ties to the royal family, and the never-ending speculation about her children, Archie Harrison and Lilibet Diana. For Meghan, a single photograph could shift the narrative, at least temporarily. Yet what she did not anticipate was that Rihanna, unlike many in Hollywood who shy away from confrontation, was not about to play into her hands. As Meghan approached, cameras still flashing wildly at Rihanna, a hush fell over those close enough to sense that something extraordinary was about to happen. Meghan wore her signature smile, perfected over years of royal engagements and Hollywood networking. To her, this was a moment of opportunity. To Rihanna, however, it was something else entirely. Rihanna's sharp gaze caught Meghan before Meghan could even open her mouth, and that's when the tension began to thicken. The world may have expected Rihanna to nod politely, to exchange a few pleasantries, perhaps even pose for a photograph. Instead, Rihanna did the unexpected. She challenged Meghan directly. Eyewitnesses described the moment with a kind of reverence usually reserved for scenes in movies. Rihanna, cradling her growing belly, leaned slightly forward, her voice calm but cutting. She asked the question that millions had whispered behind screens, typed into comment sections, and speculated about in countless tabloids. Where are Archie and Lilibet? Do they even exist? The words landed like thunderclaps, shocking not only Meghan but everyone within earshot. In one sentence, Rihanna had pierced through the veil of Meghan's carefully guarded narrative, dragging the most controversial rumor about Meghan into the blinding light of public confrontation. Meghan's reaction was immediate and revealing. For someone who prides herself on composure, her mask slipped almost instantly. She stammered, tried to laugh it off, and then shifted into defensive overdrive. Her voice, once polished and controlled, trembled as she insisted that her children were real, that they were simply shielded from the public eye for privacy. But Rihanna wasn't swayed. Her body language alone, confident and unyielding, made it clear that she was not going to be pacified by rehearsed answers or polished excuses. This wasn't about a soundbite or a staged smile. This was about truth, and Rihanna had become the unexpected vessel for a global question. The middle of this dramatic introduction unfolds in the raw human emotion that pulsed through the scene. Meghan, desperate to reclaim the situation, shifted gears. She begged Rihanna to take a photograph with her, her voice cracking as she tried to frame it as a gesture of unity, of women supporting women. Yet, for the bystanders, it was clear that this was not about sisterhood. It was about optics, about Meghan clawing for relevance in the face of a superstar who needed no such maneuvers. Rihanna's refusal was as quiet as it was deafening. She did not raise her voice, nor did she resort to cruelty. Instead, she stood firm, her silence and refusal to oblige more powerful than any insult she could have uttered. It was this refusal, this symbolic denial, that marked the moment as something unforgettable. Around them, the crowd reacted in real time. Some gasped audibly, some whispered furiously into their phones, while others recorded videos that would soon be dissected by millions online. Social media erupted within minutes, hashtags trending worldwide as snippets of the encounter spread like wildfire. On Twitter, fans hailed Rihanna as fearless, as a voice for the people unafraid to ask the unaskable. On Instagram, Meghan was dragged mercilessly for what was perceived as a public begging for validation. TikTok flooded with reenactments, commentary, and memes, each more biting than the last. What had started as a chance encounter was now a cultural event, a moment of reckoning that blurred the line between celebrity gossip and global discourse. The end of this introduction leaves us standing at the precipice of an even larger story. Meghan walked away from that confrontation visibly shaken, her attempt to secure a moment of glory shattered by Rihanna's authenticity and strength. But this was not merely about one uncomfortable encounter. It was about the growing chasm between how Meghan wishes to be seen and how the world actually perceives her. It was about the relentless questions that continue to haunt her public image, questions that no carefully worded statement or glossy photoshoot can erase. And it was about Rihanna, a woman whose mere presence exposed the fragility of Meghan's carefully constructed persona. This story is not one of simple celebrity drama. It is a story of power, perception, and the fight for credibility in a world where the truth is often buried beneath appearances. By the time this saga played out, it had already ignited discussions in living rooms, newsrooms, and even palaces. As viewers, we are left with the tantalizing promise of more revelations to come, more layers to be peeled back, and more uncomfortable truths to confront. For now, we hold on to the image of Rihanna standing tall, unbending, as Meghan Markle's pleas went unanswered beneath the unforgiving glare of Beverly Hills sunlight. Under the blinding glow of Beverly Hills, where the sidewalks feel like stages and every storefront glitters as though designed for the cameras. This is a place where anonymity does not exist, where celebrities walk knowing their movements will be recorded, scrutinized, and broadcast around the world within minutes. The hum of idling luxury cars filled the street that day, paparazzi stationed with cameras ready, their ears finely tuned to the whispers of arriving stars. It wasn't unusual for fans to linger around the upscale boutiques, but there was a special kind of anticipation in the air. The energy was restless, almost electric, as if everyone sensed they were about to witness something unforgettable. The spotlight first fell on Rihanna, who has long mastered the art of commanding attention without even trying. She didn't need an entourage of stylists parading her, nor did she rely on scripted moments of exposure. The very air seemed to bend toward her, as if recognizing her status not just as a performer, but as a cultural force. On that day, her outfit reflected exactly who she was, bold yet unpretentious. She wore a flowing ensemble that highlighted her pregnancy with pride rather than concealment, turning what some might frame as vulnerability into a symbol of power. Her presence didn't just draw eyes, it drew loyalty. People erupted in cheers, phones shot upward into the air, and her name rang out like a chant echoing through the street. Every step she took radiated confidence, a blend of elegance and raw humanity that made her untouchable in the eyes of those who admired her. At the same moment, Meghan Markle made her way into the same arena of attention. For Meghan, stepping into Beverly Hills had never been about casual outings. It was always about image, about cultivating a narrative that could shift public perception. She knew very well that her relationship with the public had been turbulent at best. For some, she was a victim of relentless scrutiny and unfair judgment. For others, She was an opportunist whose every move was calculated for maximum publicity. And for many, her insistence on privacy, while simultaneously seeking media attention, created contradictions that were hard to ignore. The absence of her children in the public sphere only deepened suspicions. Where were Archie and Lilibet? Why were there so few authentic glimpses of them compared to the exposure of other royal children? These unanswered questions had grown louder over the years, and Meghan's choice of timing on this day only seemed to add fuel to the speculation. Observers later debated whether Meghan's arrival was intentional or coincidental, but to those who watched closely, her behavior suggested precision. She lingered just enough on the edges of the crowd, letting the initial wave of excitement for Rihanna crest before she made her move. She wore her trademark smile, one that had carried her through royal duties and red carpets alike, but beneath it lay an unmistakable tension. Her body language betrayed a hunger for recognition, the way her eyes darted toward cameras as if gauging whether she was being seen. Meghan had grown accustomed to orchestrating moments, yet here she was stepping into Rihanna's spotlight, a dangerous gamble, for in Rihanna's presence, authenticity outshone everything else. As Meghan inched closer, the scene began to shift. Paparazzi who had been focused entirely on Rihanna started to adjust their lenses, recognizing the brewing tension. Fans who had gathered to cheer Rihanna now found themselves whispering, their excitement turning into curiosity. The air thickened with expectation, the kind of suspense usually reserved for climactic scenes in movies. It wasn't just that two celebrities were in the same space. It was the contrast between them that set hearts racing. Rihanna, radiant and unapologetically herself, stood as a symbol of empowerment. Meghan, polished yet visibly anxious, carried the weight of public suspicion and the desperation of someone who needed this moment to go well. It is important to understand why this single encounter felt so monumental. Rihanna represents a narrative of resilience. From her humble beginnings to becoming a billionaire entrepreneur and music legend, her story has been rooted in transparency. She never hid her struggles, nor did she shy away from admitting her flaws. That vulnerability became her strength, earning her the admiration of millions who saw themselves in her journey. Meghan, however, had walked a different path. She had entered the world stage as an actress who became a duchess, someone whose life seemed like a modern fairy tale. Yet her story had become clouded by secrecy, inconsistencies, and a lingering sense that she was always trying to control what people believed about her. To the crowd, this wasn't just a meeting of two famous women. It was a collision of two philosophies about fame, authenticity, and truth. As the two women stood within reach of each other, there was a hush, as though the street itself held its breath. Meghan's approach was cautious, yet deliberate. She smiled broadly, perhaps hoping to frame the encounter as a friendly chance meeting, a moment of unity between two powerful women of color whose stories had intersected with global conversations about race, feminism, and power. But Rihanna's reaction was far from scripted. Instead of immediately embracing Meghan or offering her the warmth of solidarity, Rihanna's eyes narrowed ever so slightly. Her gaze carried the weight of someone who had seen too much manipulation in the industry to be easily swayed by polished smiles. In that instant, the tension became palpable, and the cameras clicked with renewed fervor, capturing every twitch, every glance, every flicker of emotion. It wasn't long before whispers began to ripple through the crowd. People leaned toward one another, murmuring questions about whether Meghan had shown up uninvited, whether this was another one of her attempts at publicity. Meanwhile, Rihanna remained calm, her posture firm, her demeanor unshaken. She placed a protective hand on her belly, a gesture that seemed both natural and symbolic, an assertion of her role as a mother, a protector, and a woman who wasn't about to let anyone exploit her moment. Meghan, on the other hand, grew increasingly animated, her gestures widening as she spoke. Though her words were drowned out by the chaos of clicking shutters and murmuring voices, her desperation was written across her face. For Meghan, this wasn't just about being in the same space as Rihanna. It was about aligning herself with Rihanna's authenticity in hopes that some of it might rub off on her. The opening chapter of this saga is not just about the physical encounter in Beverly Hills, but about the symbolic stage it set. Rihanna's effortless presence highlighted everything Meghan seemed to lack in that moment. Where Rihanna shined with authenticity, Meghan appeared calculated. Where Rihanna seemed grounded and secure, Meghan exuded unease. The clash wasn't loud or violent, but its power lay in the unspoken truths it exposed. For everyone who witnessed it, this wasn't just another celebrity sighting. It was the beginning of a narrative that promised to unravel layers of illusion, desperation, and confrontation. This is where the curtain lifts on the drama that would follow, a stage now set with two figures whose interaction would echo far beyond Beverly Hills. The world had seen the contrast. The question now was, how far would this go, and what deeper truths were about to be exposed? Into Meghan Markle's long and complicated relationship with image, a relationship that has defined her career from its very beginning and has only intensified since stepping into and out of the royal family. To understand why her appearance alongside Rihanna and Beverly Hills carried so much weight, one has to examine how Meghan has used, shaped, and at times manipulated her image to remain relevant in the public eye. This was not simply a matter of her seeking recognition. It was about survival in a world that thrives on perception and where image can mean the difference between influence and irrelevance. Meghan's obsession with image is not new. Before she ever became the Duchess of Sussex, she was an actress navigating the demanding world of Hollywood. As an actress on Suits, she understood the value of being seen, of maintaining a certain persona that appealed to producers, fans, and media alike. Image was not just about personal pride, it was currency. Every appearance, every photo shoot, every interview became an opportunity to reinforce a narrative of elegance, intelligence, and relatability. She learned early that in Hollywood, success is not just about talent. It is about how you package yourself, how the world perceives you, and how effectively you can control the story others tell about you. That skill, honed during her acting years, became even more crucial when she entered the royal family. Overnight, Meghan transformed from an actress known for a supporting role into one of the most famous women in the world. With Prince Harry at her side, her image became the subject of global fascination. For Meghan, this was both a blessing and a curse. On one hand, it gave her a platform unlike any she had ever known. On the other, it trapped her within expectations, traditions, and scrutiny far harsher than Hollywood could ever offer. Every outfit was dissected, every gesture analyzed, every word weighed for hidden meaning. In that environment, controlling her image was not just desirable, it was essential. Yet, despite her best efforts, controversies followed her, and her attempts to reshape narratives often backfired, feeding instead the perception that she was manipulative and self-serving. It is within this context that her desperation in Beverly Hills takes on meaning. Meghan understood that Rihanna's star power was unshakable, built on authenticity that no scandal could undermine. By placing herself near Rihanna, Meghan hoped to borrow some of that credibility, to be photographed as if standing on equal footing. But Rihanna's refusal to play along only magnified Meghan's struggle. It forced the public to see Meghan not as an equal, but as someone chasing after a moment that wasn't hers to claim. The desperation was not just about one photo op. It was about an entire strategy built on image, a strategy that had carried Meghan this far, but was now faltering under the weight of doubt and public skepticism. Her obsession with optics can be traced through a series of carefully orchestrated moves over the years. When Meghan and Harry announced their departure from royal duties, the accompanying statements and interviews were meticulously crafted to frame them as victims seeking freedom. Yet, their actions often contradicted the image they tried to project. Their Netflix deals, high-profile interviews, and public appearances revealed an ongoing hunger for attention even as they claimed to crave privacy. The contradiction did not go unnoticed, and the public grew increasingly wary. The question was no longer whether Meghan could control her image, but whether her efforts were exposing the very flaws she sought to conceal. Rihanna, by contrast, had built her brand on doing the opposite. She rarely sought validation from others and refused to play by the rules of polished publicity. She embraced her imperfections, owned her decisions, and carried her personal struggles openly, from heartbreaks to business ventures to her experiences with motherhood. That authenticity resonated with millions because it felt real, uncalculated, and raw. In Beverly Hills, this stark difference between the two women's approaches to fame played out in real time. Rihanna didn't need Meghan. Meghan, however, desperately needed Rihanna, and everyone watching could see it. Observers later pointed out how Meghan's demeanor shifted the moment she saw the cameras capturing her alongside Rihanna. She angled her body slightly toward the photographers, ensuring that her presence would be recorded. Her smile grew wider, almost rehearsed, as if she already imagined the headlines. Meghan Markle and Rihanna together, women of power and influence uniting in Beverly Hills. But her attempts at controlling the narrative collapsed when Rihanna refused to pose with her. What Meghan intended as an image of solidarity turned into an image of rejection, and in the brutal world of public perception, rejection often speaks louder than words. This obsession with how she is perceived also extends to her children. The absence of Archie and Lilibet from public life has fueled relentless speculation. Meghan has often cited privacy as the reason, but in an age where nearly every public figure shares glimpses of their families, the secrecy has only deepened suspicion. Critics argue that by keeping her children hidden, Meghan is controlling their existence as part of her image rather than allowing them to be seen as real individuals. This secrecy became a point of vulnerability in her clash with Rihanna, whose question about the children cut to the very heart of Meghan's constructed narrative. For years, Meghan had avoided answering directly, dismissing speculation as cruel gossip. But Rihanna's confrontation made it impossible to ignore. At the heart of this chapter lies a deeper truth. Meghan's obsession with image reflects her fear of losing relevance. Hollywood is unforgiving, and the public's memory is short. Without constant reinforcement of her brand, Meghan risks fading into the background, overshadowed by figures like Rihanna, whose influence is genuine and enduring. That fear drives her to seek moments like the one in Beverly Hills, where she can align herself with stars who command respect. Yet, as the encounter revealed, desperation cannot manufacture authenticity. Instead, it exposes the very insecurity it seeks to hide. The scene, captured in hundreds of photographs and countless videos, will be remembered not for what Meghan achieved, but for what she failed to achieve. It was supposed to be her triumph, a moment of reclaiming control over her narrative. Instead, it became a stark reminder that image cannot substitute for authenticity. The public, always perceptive, saw through the smiles and gestures. They saw a woman chasing validation in the shadow of another whose very presence highlighted the fragility of her facade. This chapter closes with a lingering question. How long can Meghan continue to rely on image alone? With every attempt at controlling the narrative backfiring, with every calculated gesture exposed as desperation, her hold on public perception weakens. And as Rihanna showed that day, sometimes all it takes is one moment of refusal to unravel years of careful construction. The obsession with image that once gave Meghan power now threatens to undo her entirely, setting the stage for the escalating drama that will unfold in the chapters ahead. With the intensity of the first direct interaction between Meghan Markle and Rihanna, a moment that carried the weight of years of public suspicion, conflicting narratives, and unspoken tension. By the time Meghan had edged close enough to Rihanna, the atmosphere in Beverly Hills had shifted from casual excitement to something more electric, like the air before a storm. Photographers sensed it immediately, raising their cameras higher, adjusting their positions to ensure they wouldn't miss a single frame. Bystanders, who moments before were cheering and calling out Rihanna's name, now whispered nervously, their voices dropping as they realized that they were witnessing not a warm celebrity exchange, but the beginning of a confrontation that would ripple across the globe. Meghan approached with a smile that felt both practiced and desperate. Her stride was deliberate, her eyes scanning the cameras even as she extended her hand toward Rihanna. For Meghan, the moment had already been scripted in her mind. She envisioned herself standing beside Rihanna, two powerful women embracing in solidarity, with photographs splashed across magazines and social media feeds the next morning. It was a chance to rewrite her story, to replace the headlines of controversy with an image of unity. She leaned in slightly, her voice rising above the hum of the crowd, offering pleasantries and congratulations on Rihanna's pregnancy. To Meghan, these words were an entry point, a bridge to the photograph she so desperately wanted. But Rihanna's response disrupted that script almost instantly. She did not lean in with warmth, nor did she return Meghan's smile with enthusiasm. Instead, Rihanna kept her body slightly turned, her expression guarded, her tone clipped. She nodded politely, but her eyes conveyed something sharper: skepticism. Those who were close enough to witness the exchange noted the shift in the atmosphere. Meghan's eagerness contrasted starkly with Rihanna's restraint, and that imbalance became impossible to ignore. It was in that imbalance that the tension began to escalate, drawing everyone's attention to the space between them. The tension reached a breaking point when Rihanna asked the question that silenced the noise around them. Cradling her stomach, she fixed Meghan with a steady gaze and, in a calm but piercing voice, questioned the existence of Archie and Lilibet. It was the very question that Meghan had spent years deflecting, the speculation that had shadowed every public appearance, every carefully worded statement, every tightly controlled photograph. And now it was being voiced not by a tabloid journalist or anonymous online commenter, but by one of the most respected and admired women in the world. In that moment, Rihanna became the mouthpiece for the millions who had wondered but never dared to confront Meghan directly. Meghan froze, her smile faltering, her composure unraveling in real time. For a split second, she seemed caught off guard, her mouth opening as if to speak, but no words coming out. The cameras caught it all: the flicker of panic in her eyes, the way her hands fidgeted with the sleeve of her outfit, the sudden flush of her cheeks. She scrambled to respond, insisting that her children were real, that they were kept private for their safety. But her words, though hurried and rehearsed, lacked conviction. Rihanna's silence in response was louder than Meghan's protestations. It was not merely disbelief, it was dismissal, a refusal to be swayed by the very narrative Meghan was trying to push. The bystanders, sensing the gravity of the moment, reacted with a mixture of awe and shock. Some gasped audibly, others murmured into their phones, already relaying the scene to friends or streaming live on social platforms. The paparazzi, their shutters clicking furiously, knew they had struck gold. They weren't just capturing photographs, they were documenting a cultural moment, one that would ignite conversations in every corner of the world. The videos, taken from shaky phones and professional cameras alike, would soon flood social media, dissected frame by millions eager to interpret every look, every gesture, every word exchanged. As Meghan tried to salvage the situation, her desperation became more apparent. She reached out again, her voice rising as she begged Rihanna for a photograph together, framing it as an opportunity to celebrate women standing together. Her tone shifted from confident to pleading, her smile tightening into something almost painful to watch. But Rihanna, her expression cool and unyielding, shook her head subtly and turned slightly away, signaling that she would not be part of the performance Meghan was staging. It was a rejection that cut deeper than any verbal insult could have. To Meghan, the refusal was devastating. To the world, it was telling. The scene encapsulated everything the public had long suspected about Meghan's reliance on optics. She wasn't seeking connection with Rihanna as a person. She was seeking validation through Rihanna's image. But Rihanna's refusal exposed the hollowness of that pursuit. It revealed Meghan not as a confident public figure, but as a woman clinging desperately to relevance, unable to secure it on her own terms. This stark contrast between Meghan's desperation and Rihanna's grounded authenticity played out not in words, but in body language, in tone, in silence that spoke volumes. The crowd, caught between admiration for Rihanna and discomfort at Meghan's display, began to shift their energy. Where moments earlier Meghan might have hoped to be cheered alongside Rihanna, she now found herself the subject of whispered ridicule. Social media amplified the divide. Within minutes, hashtags trended worldwide. Clips of Rihanna's question about Archie and Lilibet spread rapidly, sparking heated debates online. Some praised Rihanna for voicing what many had been thinking. Others criticized Meghan for her apparent desperation. The narrative had escaped Meghan's control entirely, and there was no statement, no interview, no PR strategy that could erase what had just been captured. The power of this first encounter lay not in shouting or theatrics, but in its raw authenticity. It was unscripted, unplanned, and brutally revealing. Meghan had walked into the moment with a clear plan, But Rihanna had shattered it effortlessly, not through aggression but through the refusal to participate in illusion. And as the cameras continued to capture every moment, Meghan's carefully curated image crumbled before the eyes of the world. By the time Meghan withdrew, her smile reduced to a strained line and her voice lost in the roar of the crowd, the damage had been done. The confrontation would be replayed endlessly, analyzed in newsrooms, debated in online forums, and dissected by experts in body language and media strategy. For Meghan, it was a public unraveling. For Rihanna, it was a silent assertion of her power, her authenticity shining brighter than any crafted narrative. This chapter ends with the stark image of two women standing just feet apart, yet separated by worlds. One basked in the glow of genuine admiration, unshaken by controversy. The other stood exposed, her reliance on image revealed as fragile, her desperation immortalized in photographs that would outlive the moment itself. What began as a simple encounter in Beverly Hills had now evolved into a symbolic confrontation, setting the stage for the deeper conflicts and revelations to follow in the chapters ahead. With the echo of Rihanna's piercing question still hanging in the Beverly Hills air, a question so direct and unapologetic that it cut through Meghan Markle's polished exterior like a blade. The existence of Archie Harrison and Lilibet Diana had long been a point of contention, a rumor that swirled endlessly in tabloids, podcasts, and comment sections across the internet. But until that moment, no one of Rihanna's stature had dared to confront Meghan publicly about it. The sheer audacity of the question shocked the crowd into silence, leaving Meghan stranded in the spotlight without the carefully controlled buffer of sympathetic interviews or orchestrated press appearances. What made Rihanna's words so powerful was not just their content, but their timing. Meghan had spent years dodging the subject, burying speculation beneath layers of statements about privacy, about security, about protecting her children from the harsh glare of public life. Yet each attempt to silence the chatter only seemed to magnify it. People could not reconcile why other royals, even those further down the line of succession, could present their children without fear, while Meghan seemed determined to shield hers completely. To some, it was proof of protective motherhood. To others, it was evidence of something being hidden. And now, Rihanna had spoken aloud what many believed, but few dared to say. Do they even exist? Meghan's face betrayed the impact of the words before her voice could. She flinched almost imperceptibly, her eyes darting toward the cameras, then toward the bystanders, as though searching for an ally. Her smile faltered, her jaw tightened, and for the first time in the afternoon, she seemed stripped of the confidence she had carried into the encounter. The words she scrambled to find came tumbling out in a hurried rush. She insisted that Archie and Lilibet were real, that they were simply hidden away for protection, that their absence from public life was an intentional choice meant to preserve their innocence. She spoke of the cruelty of public speculation, the dangers of exposure, the relentless harassment she had endured as a mother. But her words, rehearsed and familiar, lacked the raw conviction the moment demanded. To the onlookers, it felt less like the defense of a protective mother and more like the protestations of someone cornered by a truth too dangerous to confront directly. Rihanna did not argue. She didn't need to. Her silence in response carried more weight than any rebuttal could. Her gaze lingered on Meghan, calm and unblinking, the kind of gaze that suggested she was not convinced. This refusal to accept Meghan's explanation shook the dynamic entirely. Rihanna had transformed the private whispers of millions into a public accusation, and Meghan's attempt to deflect had fallen flat. The crowd, already tense, erupted into hushed conversations, some recording videos with trembling hands, others whispering that Meghan had finally been exposed. The paparazzi, sensing the magnitude of the moment, worked furiously to capture Meghan's strained expressions, Rihanna's unwavering posture, and the visible discomfort that hung between them. The symbolism of Rihanna's question reached far beyond the street where it was asked. To Meghan's critics, it was vindication. They saw Rihanna as the voice of reason, cutting through years of spin and half-truths. To Meghan's supporters, it was cruelty, an unnecessary intrusion into the private life of a mother already vilified by the press. But to the wider public, it became something more profound, a cultural reckoning with authenticity itself. In Rihanna's calm, unyielding presence, people saw the embodiment of truth. In Meghan's fumbling defense, they saw the fragility of a narrative that had been carefully managed but never fully believed. The tension in that moment was amplified by Meghan's body language. Even as she tried to regain composure, her movements betrayed her unease. Her hands gestured too widely. Her smile returned too quickly. Her voice pitched higher than usual. Every action seemed designed to perform confidence rather than convey it. By contrast, Rihanna's stillness radiated power. She didn't need to raise her voice, didn't need to elaborate. Her refusal to be swept into Meghan's performance spoke volumes. She represented the authenticity Meghan craved but could not claim. This chapter also highlights why the question about Archie and Lilibet carried such explosive potential. Children in royal families have always been symbols of continuity, proof of lineage, and embodiments of national identity. Their public existence is often intertwined with tradition and ceremony. Meghan's refusal to allow her children into that tradition had been framed as a break from outdated norms, but it had also fueled suspicions that something deeper was at play. In the public imagination, the children had become less real than symbolic, figures whose absence was louder than their presence could ever be. And when Rihanna asked the question, she forced Meghan to confront that symbolism head-on, in public, with no opportunity to retreat behind palace walls or carefully edited interviews. Meghan's insistence on privacy for her children had always been a double-edged sword. While some admired her desire to shield them, others noted that she seemed to use them selectively, invoking their existence when it served her narrative but refusing to provide even the smallest shred of evidence when doubts arose. This inconsistency eroded trust, leaving a vacuum into which rumors poured. By asking directly, Rihanna exposed that vacuum, and Meghan's inability to fill it convincingly only deepened the suspicion. The very narrative Meghan had built around protecting her children had now been weaponized against her, and she had no ready defense. As the confrontation played out, the crowd became part of the story. Some gasped audibly, covering their mouths in shock. Others whispered furiously, recording videos and narrating their interpretations in real time. Within minutes, the scene had leapt from the sidewalks of Beverly Hills to the screens of millions worldwide. Social media platforms erupted with clips of Rihanna's words, with captions like, "She finally said it," or "Rihanna just ended Meghan's facade." Hashtags trended globally, memes were created almost instantly, and the confrontation became more than gossip, it became a cultural event. The question of Archie and Lilibet was no longer confined to tabloids and conspiracy theories. It was now mainstream, validated by Rihanna's willingness to voice it. Meghan, realizing the gravity of what had just happened, tried desperately to pivot. She spoke of motherhood, of women supporting each other, of the importance of compassion. Her tone grew pleading as she attempted to reframe the encounter as one of solidarity rather than confrontation. But Rihanna's silence persisted, and the crowd's reaction made clear that the narrative had already slipped from Meghan's grasp. This was no longer her story to control. It belonged to the cameras, to the bystanders, to the millions dissecting it online. Her words dissolved into the noise, while Rihanna's question remained, echoing louder with each replay of the video. The fallout of this exchange would extend far beyond that afternoon. Meghan had been forced into a corner she could not escape, her defenses unraveling in public view. Rihanna, meanwhile, had emerged as a symbol of fearlessness, her refusal to indulge Meghan's narrative elevating her authenticity even further. In that moment, the question of Archie and Lilibet was not just about two children. It was about credibility, about the fragility of image, and about the power of truth to dismantle illusion. For Meghan, it was the unraveling of years of carefully constructed defenses. For Rihanna, it was a declaration, subtle yet devastating, that authenticity cannot be faked, and that truth has a way of surfacing, no matter how deeply buried. By the end of this chapter, the clash between the two women had transformed into something larger than themselves. It was no longer just about a confrontation on a sidewalk in Beverly Hills. It was about the public's hunger for honesty in a world saturated with performance. Rihanna had spoken the words that millions had wanted to hear, and Meghan had failed to silence them. That failure would haunt her, shaping the narrative in the days and weeks that followed. ensuring that the question of Archie and Lilibet would linger long after the cameras had stopped flashing. With the image of Meghan Markle shifting from defensive explanations to outright desperation, her voice straining as she turned the encounter with Rihanna into a plea for validation. The weight of Rihanna's silence after asking about Archie and Lilibet had left Meghan visibly shaken. It was no longer just a celebrity crossing paths with another in Beverly Hills. It was the unraveling of a woman who had long depended on image to sustain her influence. Meghan understood that if she left the scene without securing something, anything, that could reframe the narrative, the footage of Rihanna's question and her faltering response would define her. That knowledge drove her into a moment that would come to symbolize her desperation more than any rumor or headline ever had. She leaned closer to Rihanna, her tone shifting, her words rushing out with urgency. Meghan begged for a photograph together, framing it as a moment of female empowerment, a celebration of two women of color in the spotlight. She tried to cloak her desperation in the language of solidarity, speaking of support and unity, in hopes that Rihanna would give her what she wanted. But those watching could see through the act. It wasn't about empowerment, it was about optics. Meghan wanted the photograph because she knew what it would mean for her brand. Standing beside Rihanna, glowing with authenticity and admired worldwide, could wash away the doubts, silence the critics, and flood the internet with an image of strength and sisterhood. For Meghan, it was not just a photo, it was a lifeline. But Rihanna's response, or rather, her refusal, cut that lifeline instantly. She did not raise her voice, nor did she insult Meghan directly. Instead, she let her silence and her body language speak. Turning slightly away, she shook her head subtly, the gesture firm enough to be seen by those closest but restrained enough to avoid theatricality. Her rejection was quiet but absolute. In that small movement, Rihanna made her stance clear. She would not allow herself to be used as a prop in Meghan's struggle for relevance. To the crowd, to the cameras, to the millions who would later dissect the footage, Rihanna's refusal was more powerful than words. It showed that Meghan's desperation had reached a point where even the most celebrated women in the world would not indulge it. The effect was immediate. Meghan's face fell, her composure slipping further. She tried to recover, plastering on a smile, laughing lightly as though Rihanna's rejection were simply a misunderstanding. She gestured toward the cameras, suggesting again that a photo would be harmless, even fun. But the tension in her voice betrayed her. It was not fun for Meghan, it was survival. And the more she pushed, the more the crowd began to murmur, their whispers sharp with judgment. Bystanders exchanged glances, some even shaking their heads. What Meghan had hoped would be a moment of triumph was quickly transforming into a display of humiliation. This plea for validation revealed more than Meghan likely realized. It highlighted the contrast between her and Rihanna in the most brutal way. Rihanna, confident and grounded, needed nothing from Meghan. Her pregnancy glow, her global reputation, her aura of authenticity ensured that she commanded the spotlight effortlessly. Meghan, on the other hand, seemed to need everything from Rihanna. She needed the photograph, the association, the chance to borrow credibility. That imbalance of need exposed Meghan's vulnerability in a way no critic or headline ever could. It was on display for the world to see, one woman begging, the other standing firm. The crowd, always quick to sense the subtext of a public encounter, responded accordingly. Cheers for Rihanna grew louder as she remained poised, while Meghan's gestures drew uneasy laughter and awkward silence. Social media reactions, almost instantaneous, reflected the divide. Clips of Meghan begging for a photo circulated within minutes, accompanied by captions like, "She's begging now," and "Rihanna doesn't need her." Memes began to spread, mocking Meghan's desperation, contrasting her strained smile with Rihanna's calm refusal. The narrative that Meghan had tried so hard to control was slipping further away, not because of words spoken, but because of the image of her begging and being denied. This moment also carried deeper implications about power and authenticity. Meghan had long built her public image around themes of empowerment, independence, and strength. Yet here she was, reduced to pleading for validation from another woman. It exposed a contradiction at the heart of her persona. True empowerment does not beg. True independence does not hinge on the approval of others. Rihanna's refusal underscored this truth, reminding everyone that authenticity cannot be borrowed, it must be lived. Meghan's attempt to secure relevance through association only highlighted the absence of authenticity in her own brand. As Meghan continued to plead, trying every angle from humor to sincerity, Rihanna's silence became even more devastating. To the crowd, Rihanna's refusal elevated her, showing that she could not be manipulated or coerced into performing for optics. Her quiet strength contrasted with Meghan's unraveling facade, turning the encounter into a lesson in authenticity. The world saw in Rihanna a woman who stood firm in her truth, and in Meghan, a woman exposed as clinging desperately to illusions she could no longer sustain. By the time Meghan finally stepped back, realizing that Rihanna would not relent, the damage was done. The cameras had captured everything: the plea, the rejection, the strained laughter, the whispers of the crowd. Those images would circulate endlessly, serving as a visual metaphor for Meghan's broader struggle. She had sought to control the narrative, but had instead become trapped in one she could not escape. Rihanna's refusal was not just a denial of a photo. It was a denial of Meghan's attempt to mask desperation as empowerment. The chapter closes with Meghan standing awkwardly as Rihanna turned her attention back to the crowd, smiling at fans, waving, embracing the love directed toward her. The contrast was complete. Rihanna left the moment even more admired, her authenticity reinforced. Meghan, on the other hand, left diminished, her desperation immortalized in images and videos that would haunt her for weeks, if not longer. What Meghan had sought as a lifeline had become an anchor, dragging her reputation further into the depths of public skepticism. This scene, more than any other, encapsulated the essence of their encounter. It was not about words spoken or arguments made. It was about the raw, visible truth of desperation meeting authenticity, and authenticity refusing to bend. Meghan's plea for a photo would live on as a symbol of her unraveling, while Rihanna's refusal would stand as a declaration of strength. And as the crowd dispersed, buzzing with disbelief at what they had just witnessed, one truth became clear. This was no ordinary celebrity clash. It was a battle over authenticity itself, and Meghan had lost. With the image of Rihanna standing firmly, hand resting gently on her pregnant belly, a gesture that radiated not only maternal pride, but also quiet defiance. In that moment, her pregnancy became more than a personal journey. It was a symbol of authenticity and transparency, a stark contrast to the secrecy and speculation that had long shrouded Meghan Markle's own experiences with motherhood. Where Meghan had hidden behind carefully curated narratives, Rihanna embraced her pregnancy openly, her body a testament to life and strength, her presence a declaration of truth. That contrast did not go unnoticed, and it became one of the most powerful aspects of the confrontation. The public has always admired Rihanna's willingness to live authentically. From the beginning of her career, she refused to be confined by expectations. She sang about heartbreak without sugarcoating, built a business empire rooted in inclusivity, and carried herself with a confidence that inspired millions. Her pregnancy only amplified that aura. Instead of hiding her growing belly behind oversized outfits or disappearing from the public eye, she flaunted it with pride. She redefined what it meant to be a pregnant woman in the public eye, showing that strength and femininity were not diminished by motherhood, but enhanced by it. To see her stand so unapologetically in Beverly Hills was to witness empowerment embodied. Meghan, however, carried a very different reputation when it came to pregnancy and motherhood. Her first pregnancy with Archie was marred by secrecy and rumors, from the debate over her baby bump to speculation about surrogacy. When Lilibet was born, the mystery only deepened. There were whispers of hidden arrangements, of staged photographs, of inconsistencies in timelines. The more Meghan insisted on privacy, the more the public grew suspicious. What was meant to shield her family instead fueled a firestorm of speculation that refused to die down. Her attempts to control the narrative only made matters worse, creating a perception that she was hiding something rather than protecting her children. Against this backdrop, Rihanna's visible and celebrated pregnancy stood as an unspoken rebuke to Meghan's secrecy. As Rihanna stood tall that afternoon, Her strength became a mirror reflecting Meghan's insecurities. Meghan's body language revealed the pressure she felt. Her posture slumped slightly as if weighed down by the comparison. Her voice, strained with pleading, contrasted sharply with Rihanna's calm silence. Every gesture Meghan made seemed calculated, while Rihanna's every movement seemed effortless. The crowd could feel it. They saw Rihanna's pregnancy as real, tangible, undeniable. They saw Meghan's motherhood, in contrast, as something clouded by doubt. The juxtaposition was brutal, and it played out in front of cameras that would broadcast it to the entire world. What gave Rihanna's presence such power was her refusal to hide. Pregnancy, in many cases, can be framed as a vulnerable state, but Rihanna transformed it into strength. She turned the very thing that might have been used to diminish her into a shield of authenticity. In the face of Meghan's pleas for a photo, Rihanna's protective hand on her belly seemed to signal that she would not allow her unborn child to be part of a staged narrative. It was as if she were saying, without words, that motherhood is sacred, not a tool to be exploited for image. That unspoken message resonated deeply, and it elevated Rihanna beyond celebrity status into a cultural symbol of truth and resilience. The media quickly picked up on this contrast. Within hours of the confrontation, articles began to circulate highlighting Rihanna's strength as a pregnant woman who refused to bend to Meghan's desperation. Commentators noted how her pregnancy had become a source of empowerment, while Meghan's experiences with motherhood were increasingly linked to controversy and mistrust. Headlines framed Rihanna as fearless, authentic, and protective, while Meghan was cast as desperate, manipulative, and hollow. The comparison was merciless, but it was grounded in the symbolism of that moment. Two women stood before the cameras, both mothers, yet the world saw one as genuine and the other as contrived. The crowd's reaction also reflected this dynamic. Fans cheered louder for Rihanna, chanting her name, showering her with admiration. Meghan's presence, once intended to bask in shared glory, was instead overshadowed. Whispers grew louder about the absence of her children, about her constant attempts to control her image, about the contrast between her hidden pregnancies and Rihanna's celebrated one. The narrative Meghan hoped to reshape by standing next to Rihanna had instead crystallized against her. Authenticity had triumphed over performance, and the public sided with Rihanna without hesitation. This chapter also reveals the emotional toll on Meghan. For a woman who has always prided herself on being able to command attention, the realization that she could not compete with Rihanna's authenticity must have been devastating. Her eyes darted constantly to the cameras, as if willing them to capture her in a flattering light. Her words grew more desperate, her gestures more exaggerated, as though trying to force herself into a spotlight that had already moved on. But no matter how hard she tried, the comparison was too stark, the symbolism too powerful. She was not standing as an equal beside Rihanna. She was standing exposed, her narrative unraveling under the weight of Rihanna's authenticity. Rihanna, for her part, did not need to say much. Her silence and her strength did the talking. Her pregnant figure became a symbol of defiance, of truth, of a woman unafraid to stand in her reality. She did not need Meghan's validation, nor did she need to explain herself. Her authenticity was self-evident, and it stood as a rebuke to the very idea that image could be crafted through manipulation. In that moment, Rihanna represented everything Meghan had tried and failed to embody: honesty, strength, and empowerment born not from performance, but from lived experience. By the end of this chapter, the symbolism of Rihanna's pregnant strength had completely overtaken the narrative Meghan had hoped to craft. What Meghan intended as a photo opportunity had turned into a spectacle of contrast, between secrecy and openness, between desperation and confidence, between illusion and truth. For the world watching, the message was clear. Rihanna's strength was undeniable, and Meghan's weakness was exposed. The image of Rihanna, glowing and unyielding, standing tall against Meghan's pleas, would linger far longer than any headline Meghan could buy or any carefully worded statement she could release. It was the ultimate lesson in authenticity, and Meghan had failed it in front of the entire world. With the lingering tension from the Beverly Hills encounter, as Meghan Markle retreats into the privacy of her luxurious home, the echo of Rihanna's words and presence still haunting her. The atmosphere inside is thick with unease, a sharp contrast to the opulent calm that usually defines her surroundings. Servants move quietly through the halls, sensing the emotional storm but careful not to intrude, as Meghan paces the grand living room, phone clutched tightly in her hand, desperate to regain control of a narrative slipping through her fingers. The confrontation with Rihanna had not just been public. It had been humiliating, a blow to the carefully constructed image Meghan had spent years curating. Every detail mattered now. How this encounter would be perceived by the press, by social media, by Prince Harry, and by the world at large. Meghan's mind races as she considers the implications. What would her critics say? How would tabloids frame the story? She recalls the dozens of headlines from previous controversies, the endless commentary dissecting her every move, and she realizes that this moment might surpass them all. Unlike other scandals, this was visual, tangible. The contrast between Rihanna's authenticity and her own perceived secrecy was undeniable, and the public had witnessed it in real time. She replays the scene in her mind, the confident posture, the hand resting on the pregnant belly, the calm defiance that radiated from Rihanna. Every angle of the encounter magnified her own desperation, her pleas for a photo revealing vulnerability she could not afford to show. Meanwhile, the public and media frenzy escalates. Social media explodes with side-by-side images of Rihanna and Meghan, comparisons flooding platforms within minutes. Influencers, journalists, and everyday users weigh in with sharp commentary, framing the encounter as a clash of authenticity versus performance. Some applaud Rihanna's openness and strength, calling her a symbol of empowerment for mothers everywhere. Others dissect Meghan's body language, her expression, her apparent desperation, interpreting it as a signal of deeper insecurities. Hashtags trend worldwide, and video clips of the confrontation are shared millions of times, each view reinforcing the narrative that Meghan had lost control. The immediacy of the digital age amplifies the impact, making the moment a defining point in public perception. Amid this chaos, Meghan reaches out to her inner circle. Phone calls are made, messages sent, all attempts to mitigate the fallout. Advisors suggest carefully worded statements, strategic appearances, and social media posts designed to regain narrative control. Meghan listens, but her mind is elsewhere. She replays the events again, haunted by the way Rihanna's authenticity overshadowed her every effort. The conversation with her team is tense. Advisors speak in measured tones, but Meghan's frustration seeps through. She questions why, despite her efforts and resources, she cannot command the same level of public admiration. She wonders if every calculated move she has ever made now feels hollow in comparison to someone who simply lived their truth. The psychological toll becomes evident. Meghan experiences a mix of anger, fear, and self-doubt. Anger at the public for witnessing the encounter, fear of permanent damage to her image, and self-doubt about her own choices and methods of navigating motherhood in the public eye. Each emotion compounds the others, creating an internal storm that mirrors the external chaos. She thinks about Archie Harrison and Lilibet Diana, her children whose very existence had been questioned in whispers and now, indirectly, in confrontation. Her maternal instincts flare, a fierce protective energy, yet it is shadowed by the realization that control over perception is slipping from her grasp. Rihanna's actions, though simple, a hand on a belly, a serene presence, a refusal to engage beyond the moment, carry immense power. They communicate strength without words, authenticity without explanation. The public responds not because of a statement or a press release, but because authenticity resonates universally. Meghan, in contrast, has long relied on curation, control, and carefully orchestrated narratives. The encounter exposes the fragility of that approach in the face of genuine openness. For the first time, Meghan must confront the possibility that some elements of life, especially motherhood, cannot be controlled or framed to perfection. The chapter deepens by examining Meghan's internal dialogue. She reflects on the years of public scrutiny, the attempts to maintain dignity, the strategies employed to shape perception, and the repeated backlashes faced. She acknowledges the irony. In striving to maintain control, she has often invited skepticism, and in trying to protect her children from the public eye, she has inadvertently fueled speculation. The contrast with Rihanna's approach is stark. Rihanna embraces visibility, allows the world to witness her reality, and in doing so, commands respect. Meghan's protective measures, though well-intentioned, now seem to her as barriers that isolate rather than shield. Outside, the world continues to watch. Media outlets dissect the confrontation endlessly, television commentary panels debate every angle, and social media threads explode with opinion. The scrutiny extends beyond Meghan, affecting Harry as well. Sources close to him report that he is deeply concerned, balancing his loyalty to his wife with the growing public narrative that now questions the authenticity of their family image. Private conversations between the couple are described as tense, emotionally charged, and urgent. Meghan seeks reassurance, but also advice, desperately needing a strategy that will stabilize public perception while preserving her dignity and family privacy. In the midst of this, legal considerations begin to surface. Advisors and lawyers discuss potential defamation implications, image rights, and the delicate balance between public appearances and private family protection. Every statement must be weighed carefully, every appearance meticulously planned. Meghan feels the weight of these decisions heavily, as if the very air around her is charged with scrutiny and expectation. The Beverly Hills encounter has transformed a simple public appearance into a complex strategic and emotional battlefield. By the chapter's conclusion, the emotional stakes are laid bare. Meghan faces a pivotal moment in her public life, one that could define how the world perceives her going forward. She must reconcile her desire for control with the reality of public perception, navigate the delicate dynamics of authenticity versus curated image, and confront the lingering impact of Rihanna's unexpected, yet profound, display of strength. The tension between these forces sets the stage for the subsequent chapters, where Meghan's next moves, both calculated and impulsive, will continue to unfold under the unrelenting gaze of a global audience. The confrontation has left an indelible mark, not only on Meghan but on the narrative surrounding her family, shaping the drama and emotional landscape for the chapters to come. In the quiet aftermath of the Beverly Hills encounter, with Meghan Markle retreating further into her private world, a world now shadowed by the viral storm of the previous day. She sits in her home office, walls lined with photographs, awards, and moments carefully curated to reflect her journey, yet none of it offers solace. Her mind replays every detail of the confrontation, each second magnified in clarity and emotional weight. The public had seen her vulnerability, her desperation for a simple photo, and in that instant, the delicate armor she had built over years showed cracks. The realization strikes her with a sharp intensity. In this world, perception often outweighs reality, and the narrative had already begun to spin without her consent. News alerts flash across screens around the globe. Headlines vary from neutral recounting to biting commentary. Rihanna's calm defiance overshadows Meghan's plea. Pregnant Rihanna questions the existence of Meghan's children, and Markle's desperation on display in Beverly Hills. Video clips from various angles circulate rapidly on social media, looping Meghan's outstretched hand, her subtle but palpable urgency, and the steady, unwavering presence of Rihanna. Each view reinforces a growing public perception. Meghan is not only struggling for control, but also being outshone by someone embodying authenticity. The irony gnaws at her. All the years spent meticulously managing public appearances, strategically releasing information, and controlling narratives cannot compete with the sheer magnetism of a figure who simply exists in the moment. In a quiet corner of her mansion, Meghan's thoughts turn to her children, Archie Harrison and Lilibet Diana. The questions implied during the Beverly Hills encounter sting deeply. Was the world really doubting their existence? Could a single confrontation with a high-profile celebrity undermine the narrative of her family she had worked so hard to protect? Her maternal instincts flare, intertwining with fear and frustration. She recalls moments of private joy, milestones celebrated behind closed doors, the intimate and fleeting smiles and laughter that had defined the earliest years of her children's lives. The thought that public perception could cast shadows over those memories is unbearable. In that tension between private love and public doubt, Meghan begins to grasp the magnitude of what is at stake. Meanwhile, her inner circle scrambles to respond. Calls are made to publicists, advisors, and legal counsel, each providing rapid-fire assessments of the situation. Strategic solutions are discussed, ranging from press releases to controlled social media posts, interviews with trusted journalists, and private statements to close confidants. Meghan listens, often silently, absorbing the gravity of each suggestion. Her advisors emphasize the importance of controlling the narrative before it spirals further, but Meghan feels a tension between responding too forcefully, which might draw more attention, and appearing passive, which might seem weak. Each option carries risk. Each choice amplifies the pressure, and she begins to understand that the coming days will require a delicate balance between image management and personal integrity. The chapter shifts focus to the public reaction, capturing the ripple effects of the encounter. Social media explodes with speculation, analysis, and emotional response. Influencers dissect body language, fashion choices, and expressions, while news commentators debate implications for the monarchy, celebrity culture, and motherhood in the public eye. Experts weigh in on the social psychology of authenticity, contrasting Rihanna's visible confidence and calmness with Meghan's anxious display. Psychologists are cited explaining why public perception often values visible strength over private efforts, and how this dynamic can amplify stress for public figures who must constantly navigate scrutiny. The analysis is thorough, yet relentless, leaving little space for Meghan to breathe or regroup. As the day unfolds, Meghan seeks refuge in controlled spaces, attempting to create private moments amidst the chaos. She retreats to her garden, a carefully curated sanctuary filled with flowering plants, soft breezes, and the distant hum of the city below. In these moments of solitude, she reflects on her journey, the rise to global prominence, the challenges of life under constant scrutiny, the tension between public expectation and personal authenticity. Each memory carries weight, a reminder of the stakes at hand. She realizes that her actions are not just about her own reputation, but about the narrative surrounding her family, the perception of her children, and the influence these perceptions hold over public empathy and understanding. The chapter intensifies as Meghan begins to strategize. She considers approaching Rihanna directly, reaching out through mutual contacts, or crafting a statement that might restore some measure of control. Each potential move is fraught with uncertainty. Will engagement exacerbate the situation or offer a path to reconciliation? How will the public interpret any attempt to connect with a figure who has already publicly challenged her narrative? The complexity of these decisions mirrors the broader tension between personal dignity and public perception, a recurring theme in her life that has only intensified in the digital age where every action is amplified, dissected, and archived. Finally, Chapter 8 closes on a note of heightened tension and introspection. Meghan remains in her sanctuary, the weight of the day pressing heavily, aware that the confrontation with Rihanna is only the beginning of a longer narrative arc. The viral storm, public speculation, and personal reflection converge, creating a crucible in which her next decisions will be tested. She understands that this moment is a pivotal one, not merely a minor scandal, but a defining juncture in how she, her family, and her children will be perceived by the world. The chapter sets the stage for the next series of events, where Meghan's responses, strategies, and emotional resilience will determine the trajectory of the unfolding story, intensifying the drama and complexity that continues to captivate public attention.